AAVEA became an association only in 2018, which is not long from where we're at right now. And so now becoming an association had a different type of responsibility towards our constituency. And it was the constituency that said, yes, please, let's form an association. Let's make sure that our voice counts. In fact, the new vision of AAVEA says we are Africa's voice for visitor experiences and attractions.
Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast.
Hey, Josh, how are you?
Hey, Matt, I'm doing awesome. How are you?
I am fantastic today.
I like the upward, change in key there, perhaps?
Go.
Yeah.
That actually ties into a question that I have for you.
Okay.
So you like music.
I do like music.
Would you ever consider going on a trip or visiting an attraction where music was actually the central reason for visiting that particular location?
What a great question. I think the short answer is yes, definitely. I have traveled for concerts before. I think where you're probably going is visiting maybe something that is not seeing a band live, but being able to see the culture of the music, perhaps that originated from that area, or perhaps that connects or ties in with that area. In the United States, the cities of Austin and Nashville really come to mind, and they kind of sort of brand themselves as being music cities, and people who are fans of whether it's country music or it could be any genre, being able to kind of flock to those areas of being able to kind of embrace the culture and learn about it.
Well, what's interesting is when I asked the question, I hadn't even thought of concerts. That is, I've made pilgrimages to see certain music, so that could be considered, I guess, an attraction. But you're right. What I was really thinking of was thinking about the kind of the cultural implications and how music maybe has shaped a region. I probably told you that I've been to the Country Music Hall of Fame in Nashville, and while I'm not really a country music fan, it really gave me a deeper appreciation for the style and the artists that make up that music. And so the reason I'm asking that is because our guest today really talks a lot about music as an attraction in Africa.
Yeah, so fascinating. So we get to talk to Mpume Mabuza. She is the CEO of the Downtown Music Hub in Johannesburg. So she gets to tell us all about what that experience is like. And she makes references to Nashville and Austin, and we're able to kind of maybe sort of get a little flavor of what Johannesburg is like, and everything that she's doing at the Downtown Music Hub to really embrace that culture of music. She also is the president and chair of AAVEA, the African Association of Visitor Experiences and Attractions. So we get to learn all about Johannesburg and the Downtown Music Hub, but then really zooming out and looking at Africa's attractions landscape, and as far as what the industry looks like there, what it looks like right now, what the association has done and is doing to bring all these visitor attractions together, what it looks like in the future. And we even talk about the definition of an attraction.
Absolutely, because I think she very correctly points out that there's probably people who do things that are under the tourism umbrella that may not think of themselves as an attraction. even here in the United States, there's probably a museum or an aquarium. You say, we're not an attraction, right? We're a museum, we're a cultural institution or something. And, just by the definition that they share, it's either something man-made or it's natural, and it could be paid, it could be free, but it's for the enjoyment and education of the public. And, just looking at it through that lens, so many things can be considered an attraction. And what I think is really fascinating is to hear her talk about how she's working to bring all those attractions together, and some of the barriers that are, either have been imposed or currently still in place that really make that a challenge. For example, in Africa, it's made up of a number of different countries, not states like here in the US. So traveling from North Dakota to South Dakota is very, very easy, but from country to country in Africa, not so easy. She even shares a story about how I think it used to be where you'd have to actually leave the country, leave South Africa to go to another country within the continent of Africa. And what a barrier that would be if you're traveling from, your home area to an attraction that you want to visit. So I think the work that she's doing there is really incredible to try to bring those attractions together and share what, again, we may take for granted. We may take the sharing that we get to do with various attractions, and what are you doing for this and what are you doing for that? Sometimes there's unforeseen barriers that are put up that get in the way of that type of business improvement.
And she talks about these barriers as being opportunities. So her passion for the industry, you can feel it through the interview. It's she just has so much passion, so much love for visitor attractions and visitor experiences, as well as what she does in her day job at the Downtown Music Hub and the culture of music. And this was just such a fascinating conversation, and we're really excited to be able to share this interview with you all.
So should we go ahead and jump in?
Let's do it. Let's spin that record and go straight to the Downtown Music Hub.
Well, hello, Mpume. Thank you so much for joining the Attraction Pros podcast. How are you today?
Oh, thank you so much, Matt. I'm fantastic. It's great to be on this podcast show. Thank you. And thank you to you and Josh.
Our pleasure. We're so excited to get into this conversation. So first of all, can you give us a little bit of background into what you do and even your connection to the attractions industry?
Yeah, thanks. So I am the current President and Board Chairperson of the Visitor Attractions and Experiences Association here in Africa. I'm based in Johannesburg. So that role is actually a volunteer role that I took on a few years ago in terms of serving on the board of AAVEA, and just recently have been elected as a chairperson and president. But my day job is actually being CEO of Downtown Music Hub, a really iconic music heritage facilities here in the heart of Johannesburg. So yeah, I wear two hats.
Excellent. So it sounds like we'll have a lot of ground to cover in this interview of being able to talk about Downtown Music Hub as well as AAVEA as well. Can you tell us maybe a little bit kind of your background on your career that led into the roles that you're in today?
Great. So I have a solid 25 years plus experience within corporate in general. I've moved from from one industry to the next, and have been able to acquire and amass quite a lot of skills and expertise, and this is why I can now be in a position where I can lead others and support them so that they can also be empowered to follow their careers and really become the people that they want to be in terms of what the goals they've set for themselves. So, but it was really when I became the marketing executive at uShaka Marine World down in Durban. That's where I'm originally from. I was born and bred in Durban. That's where I really got to learn and understand better about the tourism industry and specifically the visitor attractions industry. And while I was also in that role as a full-time marketing executive, I also got the opportunity to serve on the board of the Attractions Africa. It was a conference at that time. That's how AAVEA started, and then became an association in 2018. So I've been serving, for over 5 years now on the board or committee of AAVEA. But also when I was in that role as marketing executive at uShaka Marine World, I also was elected as the chairperson of the Tourism Forum within the Durban Chamber of Business. The chambers normally will have different forums depending on the different sectors and industries that they serve. So I chaired the Tourism Forum for a good couple of years. So and since then, I have moved to Johannesburg to then start this role as CEO of Downtown Music Hub. The hub has a rich music heritage, really unique on the continent of Africa, and has a museum. And part of my role is to expand that museum so that it really becomes an experience that is immersive, transformative, interactive. And that's what excites me, in terms of the museum specifically. But there's a lot more that we can talk about Downtown Music Hub, regarding that.
Well, it sounds like the museum is a really exciting place, and I'd love to start there just for a second. Can you talk us through maybe a little bit of the visitor experience of the Downtown Music Hub museum and guest experience?
Yeah, so the museum, the intention was always to build it up to a bigger museum, because the history of South African music is really quite big. So it's sitting in its phase one at the moment. My responsibility as the CEO here in the hub is to take it to the next level so that it really grows and it moves out of this building into its own standalone building. And we have a truly all-round visitor experience. Now, we are currently working with some partners, the Johannesburg Inner City Partnership, which makes up a lot of the organizations within private sector and public sector, even community organizations within the inner city of Joburg. And we are putting together this music precinct, which has always been a vision when Downtown Music Hub was founded. Now, going back a little bit, Downtown Music Hub was founded in 2008 after Gallo Records sold these facilities to the government at that time. Although we're not owned by government, but the foundation came from government and the initiative came from government. And so as a result of that, these facilities were quite unique on the continent because no one could record professionally on the continent except here for many, many decades. And so that's why the heritage is quite unique. We've had, quite a lot of musicians from all around the world recording in these studios. U2, the pop group, Simply Red recorded their live album here. Dolly Parton recorded here. Kirk Franklin, Gregory Abbott, so many, even from Africa, your Hugh Masekelas, your Miriam Makebas, Yusondo, many, many more recorded here. And so that's what the heritage talks to. It's that rich heritage that is really unique, that I'm excited about to transform this iconic facility into a true visitor experience in terms of music heritage and just inspire people to sing and be happy and maybe discover their hidden talents.
By the way that you're describing it, it sounds like it is, it's a place for people to be able to learn and be able to connect with the music and the music heritage, but also to be able to connect with Johannesburg as well and seeing, the role of music in Johannesburg, in South Africa. Can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Wow, spot on, Josh. You know, one of our partners strategically is Gauteng Tourism. Gauteng is the region that we are in. And they have partnered with us in terms of, training, for example, the music legends so that they become tour guides and tell the stories, because storytelling is a trend these days. And they will be telling their stories from an authentic perspective because they've been here, and we are also working with this tourism organization so that we create an all-round experience, and it connects us to other sites within Johannesburg that also carry part of the history in terms of music. There's Market Theatre, Soweto Theatre, Sophia Town. It's amazing how much the history of South Africa, politically speaking, is so aligned with the music at any particular stage in the history of South Africa and Southern Africa.
It really sounds like you're describing music as the attraction. And one of the things that we've talked about before on the podcast is that music is a way to tell the story, as you've been talking about, but music really is the story. So can you talk a little bit about how those worlds are blending, as far as music being the attraction that people want to learn about and you want to share that heritage?
Wow, I'm really excited about this because this is also quite topical right now within the tourism industry about how music, plays a role in tourism, and truly it does. We have, as the board at Downtown Music Hub looked at, engaging partners. We've been talking to certain partners about Johannesburg being a potential music city. We've got music cities around the world, like your Austin, like your Austin, Texas, your Nashville, Tennessee. There's quite a lot of cities around the world that are termed music cities. And we believe that Joburg actually has such a rich music history that it could well become a music city. And so us as Downtown Music Hub being here in the heart of Joburg has been quite interesting because we've implemented and rolled out programs such as Music in Schools, where musicians have been allocated to the different schools in the inner city and teaching kids informally just about music, just encouraging their creative skills, etc. And the feedback we are receiving has been phenomenal. It has not been easy to put together projects like that, but when you hear the feedback, you realize actually this is so worth it. And so, music being the attraction is the truth, and people are attracted to music from anywhere in the world. Music is the one universal language, and so it does make sense that it becomes an attraction just by itself.
This is so fascinating, and I'd love to maybe kind of pull back a little bit, because I know we also want to talk about your role with the African Association of Visitor Experiences and Attractions, but I'm also kind of curious, even just more locally, of being able to work with other visitor attractions within the area to ensure that people who are coming from out of market, as far as like what their visit is like when they come to Johannesburg, they come to the Downtown Music Hub. What other, I would say, can you talk a little bit maybe of just sort of the landscape of tourism and visitor attractions just in the specific region, and kind of how Downtown Music Hub really fits in with that, as well as how you're able to work with other organizations as well? Yeah,
the visitor attractions, around here is really vast. Really, yeah, you just museums alone in South Africa, I discovered through the French Institute research that there's 327 museums just in South Africa alone. Now, That is incredible. That said, to me, as president and board chairperson of AAVEA, we have a lot of work to do. We haven't even scratched the surface in terms of just reaching out in this region and engaging these attractions, especially the professionals behind them. But yeah, just with regards to music and other attractions within our region, we are able, through AAVEA, actually, to engage with one another and, to highlight what are some of the opportunities that we have to really take the visitor experience to the next level. Gone are the days where attractions should see themselves as, in a silo. We really have every opportunity and reason to work together because there's innovation that comes out of collaboration. We've learned a lot through AAVEA over the years, through the annual conference that we've hosted, where case studies such as, the Big Six, I think they are the Big Five now in Cape Town, where attractions, a group of them would come together and they will make sure that there's one ticket that you buy to visit all of them. And then you give the visitor an all-round experience. That has been such a shining example. And almost every other region in South Africa, at least, is working towards that kind of collaboration. And what we are saying now with where AAVEA is that we want to expand our footprint throughout the rest of Africa, because we've seen the success, we've seen the positive stories in South Africa, we've seen the great foundation that Sabina Lehmann, the founder of AAVEA, together with her team, have actually laid. And we want to extend that footprint and that kind of exciting work into Africa. So yeah, there's a lot that we are doing around just the growth and development of the attractions industry in this region and in Africa.
One of the things I'm curious about, because I was looking at the AAVEA website, and one of the first things you see is the definition of attraction, right? And I think that's something that probably over here in the States we take for granted. So I'm curious, why was that deemed necessary, do you think, to put that on there in terms of just what an attraction is?
Matt, it's still necessary to this day, because there's quite a lot of attractions actually that we know are attractions, but they don't see themselves as attractions. There'll be a guy with an art gallery within their neighborhood, and they tell the story of that township or that area, and they don't see themselves as an attraction. There's this perception sometimes that attractions are your big, tourism destination, so to speak. Like your VNA waterfront, uShaka Marine World, where I worked, the Sun City, Super Bowl, your Masai Mara National Park, all these game reserves and museums and monuments. But actually, the truth is that visitor attractions come in different sizes, and we would love for everyone, irrespective of size, irrespective of which area, which sector within their visitor attractions you operate in, to feel that the association actually represents you as well.
I think it makes perfect sense. And even, when I tell people outside the industry, they say, oh, what do you do? Sometimes it's just easier to say I consult for theme parks versus if I say attractions, then, the definition, like Matt said, we kind of take it for granted, but it also is so widely encompassing that that it just incorporates so many aspects. I actually have the website pulled up. I'd love to just read off the definition, just for our audience to be able to familiarize. An attraction is a resource, natural or human-made, free to enter or paid for, that is developed and managed to attract local and international visitors for the purposes of entertainment, education, or interest. So kind of really like tying in, all this topic, and you sort of gave, some of the examples that you gave. I think it's it's incredibly beneficial for those who, like you said, they might not necessarily consider themselves an attraction. I can even tell you, an example. Several years ago, I went to go visit a museum to, give them a sales pitch. And I said, oh, I didn't see you at the IAAPA Expo. And they said, well, we're not buying a roller coaster. And I'm like, okay, so people associate the attractions industry largely with maybe amusement parks or theme parks, but being able to really pull back from that. So I guess here's my question here: is the definition there for the purpose of your members or your audience or constituency within the industry, or can and should that definition also really be stressed to the general public as well?
It's actually for both, Josh. It's to educate and to actually, clarify what really an attraction is. When someone hears, AAVEA, the full name, African Association for Visitor Experiences and Attractions, and they got confused, that definition actually clarifies, who is who in the zoo. So I think that's really, I'm laughing at the zoo thing because it just came off the, that's an intentional, it's a pun. But the idea is to just clarify who exactly we are talking about when we say visitor attractions and experiences. So we would love for, we have an opportunity right now that AAVEA is now breaking into the African continent, and we are excited to work with IAAPA in these efforts. To actually go out there and educate and engage and get to understand, so that we form these connections throughout the continent, because I really believe that there's a place that we are going that's going to be so exciting, that's going to make a big impact in the world, simply because African attractions have come together. And brought together their unique cultural heritages, their unique, different experiences, because the experiences here are really vast. When I think about the different types of attractions throughout the continent, it's almost intoxicating. It's incredible. I've had to do a lot of reading and a lot of gaining a lot more information since I was elected as president. And wow, I am absolutely wowed and am excited to just meet some of the professionals behind all of these very diverse attractions.
Can you give us a little glimpse into some of those unique attractions or things that maybe surprised you that are out there?
Yeah, well, I've done some traveling, ever since I was a child. As I was mentioning, my family, we used to have a ritual every December holiday. We will go to the game reserve not far from our home. That was Hlui Game Reserve. It's one of the big 5 game reserves on the southeast of Africa. That's the Durban coast, along the Indian Ocean. And so, having had that kind of background, it gives one an incredible insight from a young age to get to understand that although at that time I didn't know this was a visitor attraction, of course, we just knew it, in isiZulu, Isiqiwi. That is a game reserve. So we knew the animals by name, etc. But we got to know as we grow older that there's actually a lot of these national parks throughout the continent, which is incredible. And that also, that these types of attractions, for them, ecotourism is important. Sustainability in terms of tourism is critical. So it's really fascinating just learning about some of the aspects of our attractions. And then you move over to your monuments, your heritage sites, your museums. There's museums, from all over Africa. There's And almost every country has its own museums that talk about the history of that country, over and above just other museums that tell a different story than just the journey of the country or the nation. The monuments such as the African Renaissance Monument, which is in Senegal. I've not been there, but I've read a lot about it. I know people who've been there. Incredible. Just knowing about all of these, these stories, these experiences. I think the landscape in Africa is pretty wide, but there are some common themes, that we are finding. Everyone wants to move towards immersive experiences. Social media, the digital age that we are in, has taught us the importance of creating these unique experiences where people can come back home and tell a story and carry something with them. And the truth is that African attractions many times are very transformative because of the stories and the rich heritage that comes out of here.
Wow, incredible. Thank you for, I would say, kind of taking us on that tour there of just everything that's, or just so much of it that's available. And then even connecting it with something you said, a few minutes ago. You said the amount of, museums just in South Africa, and then tying it with your work with AAVEA, VEA, sorry. What are maybe some of the challenges of really bringing all of them together to be able to, I would say, engage all of them, and to your point from earlier of tearing down those silos?
Yeah, there are some challenges that are definitely there, that we constantly need to be working on and addressing. One of them, for example, is just being able to connect with visitor attractions professionals within different countries of Africa. Now, there's border issues, there's visa issues. It's not as easy to connect with the entire continent simply because of the restrictions that exist between the different countries. For many, many years, I don't know if you know this, but if you wanted to travel from South Africa to Nigeria, you would have to connect somewhere in Europe, in Frankfurt, before you come to, before you go to that African country. That has been, historically, that has created a lot of barriers to that kind of connection that we want, and even collaboration. But there is such a movement, and a positive movement right now with the work that the African Union has done in East Africa, for example, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, those countries. There's a few others. They have lifted some of those restrictions, and they are able to trade freely and do business freely and connect freely. And the visitor experiences and attractions in those regions have almost immediately, been brought to the global stage, just like that. And so it's such a great symbol and an example for all of us, the rest of Africa, that we have the same opportunity if we unlock some of these restrictions. So to me, that's really, I think, the biggest one in terms of just connecting from one attraction to the next within our continent.
Yeah, I would imagine that would really set up some really true barriers, right, in order to bring people together. I think about the way things are here over in the States, and you can go from state to state to state and visit all kinds of different attractions, and there's no worry about going over a state line. But to go over the country border in Africa, it sounds like it would be, at least in the past in many areas, has been very challenging. But one of the things I'm curious about is, you mentioned your work with IAAPA and kind of the partnership there. So I'm curious, how has that partnership maybe helped in bringing some of these attractions together, or how has that been working with IAAPA, kind of the global attractions association, to help the things that are happening on your continent?
It has been such an honor, believe me, to work with IAAPA, because of the organization of IAAPA in terms of how it's organized and the kind of impact that IAAPA has made throughout the globe. We have felt it here in Africa as well. For example, IAAPA participates in the annual conference of AAVEA. I think for as long as I can remember, we've had, speakers on specific topics, on thought leadership topics, different types of, aspects about whether it's theme parks, entertainment centers, zoos, aquariums, you name it. They've really assisted us in educating us about, their experiences with regards to attractions within their regions. And it almost helps us to then come together and say, given what we are learning in terms of the trends around the world, how does this look like for Africa? What kind of direction should we be taking together as an association? What interventions are needed in terms of supporting visitor attractions so that we truly become the authentic African attractions that we can be? There's a lot that is different between Africa and other parts of the world. Our rich cultural heritage, for example, is something that I embrace, that I would love for our attractions to embrace, because it's what makes us unique in the world. But at the same time, it's important to adapt to, trends and what works currently. The different generations will consume and experience attractions and experiences in a different way. So technology becomes important in how you package your experience, and being innovative and open-minded and being willing to learn at the same time. So yeah, it's interesting to be in this continent at this time, because even those barriers that we are talking about, they are opportunities. And the moment they are addressed, I think it's going to be really, really exciting. And it's lovely to see a lot of African organizations and bodies working towards these continental free trade zones. There is a movement right now towards those. And I can tell you, the visitor attraction industry is going to change for the better in Africa as well.
I would love to keep going just on this, just in this conversation right here. When we were speaking with Peter van der Schans, a couple of weeks ago, he was kind of giving us sort of an overview of the AAVEA region in the attractions industry, and that Europe is very mature, right? Some of the oldest parks in the world are hundreds of years old. The Middle East has seen rapid growth in the last 10 to 15 years or so. He talked about Africa really being kind of on the cusp of what's next. So I'm curious, as far as looking into the future, 10 years from now, what do you envision the industry looking like in Africa?
Wow, I think, it's going to be quite different, I believe, from where we are right now. If we're talking about making Africa a free trade zone, and you lift up all these barriers between the different countries, it means that, there is even more opportunities to collaborate, to work together. The different countries of Africa have different, I think they're at different stages when it comes to tourism. South Africa is South Africa and Egypt and maybe Kenya, they are more matured in terms of tourism than many other countries. And then you find emerging countries in terms of tourism, like your Seychelles, your Rwanda, that free trade area that I was talking about earlier. They really are emerging, and I think we're going to see a lot more of the emerging type of attractions in the next 5 to 10 years, and I think it's going to be something truly unique and something that adds to the whole visitor attractions industry in the world.
I'm curious if we can dive a little deeper into, how attractions operate in Africa. And certainly there's going to be vast differences depending maybe on where they are or the type of attraction. But, a lot of times over here in the States, we talk about, challenges with finding team members, and we talk about, supply chain things and that type of thing. So I'm curious, just from a global perspective, do you see those same sorts of challenges on the ground with visitor attractions in Africa in terms of, finding staff and motivating them and those type of things that we're seeing here in other parts of the world?
Oh, yes, we are, definitely. These are some of the actually topics that you're just highlighting as examples there. Topics that we've covered in our annual conference, for example. Just human capital, the type of people that you need in terms of, bringing the kind of visitor experience on the ground that you are looking for in your attraction. There's a varied, topics that we've covered that are actually relevant for the type of attractions that we want to see in Africa. So yeah, we are seeing exactly the same, and it will be interesting to just engage the different types of attractions throughout Africa, because some of them are, some of the areas and spaces, although I may have heard of the attraction, but I've never been there. So it will be interesting to understand how they are managing and they are managing their attractions, and to also be able to share how we've done it, what we've learned. There's a lot we've learned, by the way, from IAAPA. There's, for example, something I shared on a topic that said, what are the 5 numbers if you are an attractions manager that you need to keep top of your mind? That's something that I learned through IAAPA, and it worked for me at uShaka Marine World. I'm using it here in the museum at Downtown Music Hub. So it's fantastic to really get to understand what really resonates and is common among us as tourism or visitor attractions. Sustainability is a big trend within Africa, because as you can imagine, if we're saying the definition of an attraction is a man-made or natural. There's a lot of natural attractions in Africa. Yes, there's a lot of man-made as well. And both, all of them have a role to play. And so, emerging trends such as sustainability, we are seeing that into the future as quite important and will be quite relevant.
What about, so we talked about, developing talent. You talk about the human capital. Curious as far as if the association has a program for developing young professionals and young leaders to make sure that, that the future leaders of the industry, that topic or that conversation is, happening now to develop and grow and gain even further interest, not even just being a guest and visiting these attractions, but also really joining and finding a career in the industry as well.
So we've through IAAPA, we've done a attractions management course where people were certified after attending that course, and actually we've done it maybe once that I'm aware of ever since I joined to serve, and we are now having a great opportunity to amplify that, because both AAVEA and IAAPA EMA through Peter and the team there, we are now working together to say, how do we increase the membership within Africa? How do we work together and partner so that we enrich and support the growth and development of visitor attractions? That is exciting to look forward to. We've been talking about that with Peter, and before end of this year, leading up to next year, when we're going to have our next conference, we are going to do a roadshow together and just engage all these different attractions. And I tell you, I think we're going to find some amazing things, and I'm just looking forward to that. So yeah, developing talent is is something that is part and parcel of what AAVEA does. It's important that we professionalize the industry, and you can really do that very well if the people behind the professionals are really equipped with expertise, with knowledge, so that they then make the right decisions, and we are able to grow this sector and make it even more impactful.
So that roadshow sounds like something fun that Josh and I should join you on.
That would be awesome.
We'll be there.
You are most welcome.
So one of the other things I'm curious about is just speaking about the association. When you think about IAAPA, not to compare them all the time, but IAAPA over here in the States and globally has been around for a long time, and AAVEA is very young in the comparison. So I'm curious, from your standpoint, taking over now as president, where do you see the association itself growing? I know we've talked a lot about the connections with different attractions and how that can really bring the continent together, but just in terms of your vision for the association itself and where that has opportunity to grow.
Well, where we come from as an association really is that we've been volunteers, and we haven't really had, an office, so to speak, although Sabina, who is my predecessor, who is still on the board, by the way, of AAVEA, but serves on the governance committee of IAAPA, I think, as a chairperson of that committee. We've been able to do quite a lot by just getting volunteers to organize this annual conference, etc. But that was from 2014 when the annual conference started. AAVEA became an association only in 2018, which is not long from where we're at right now. And so now becoming an association had a different type of responsibility towards our constituency. And so, and it was the constituency that said, yes, please, let's form an association. Let's make sure that our voice count. In fact, the new vision of AAVEA says we are Africa's voice for visitor experiences and attractions. And with that, it then enables us now, actually, in this particular transition period, to work even more and better with IAAPA EMA in terms of, the market research that we've been able to do over the years and being able to benchmark our different attractions and be able to provide intelligence or insights to our constituency, and to just help them make decisions and support them make the right decisions that they want in terms of growth and development of their attractions. We're also looking forward to working with IAAPA within the region in terms of just spreading our wings and making sure that we increase the reach of AAVEA and IAAPA throughout the continent to places that we have not ever been in, and just be able to support the work that they do. And I'm really looking forward to that. I think there's a lot of scope, as you've correctly said, that AAVEA is still very new, and there's a lot that we are looking forward to working together with IAAPA in terms of strengthening this industry, building the resilience, so that it is ready for the dynamics, the trends that are coming in the future as well, while at the same time embracing what is uniquely from Africa.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, Mpume, we have a couple minutes left here. We would love to know, before we wind this down, what advice do you have for aspiring attractions executives?
Very nice. Very good question. So my advice is to, for attractions professionals, while they are growing and learning about this industry, to remain passionate, to remain hungry and curious, I've seen, you know, how I got involved with AAVEA had nothing to do with my job at uShaka Marine World. It's because I showed an interest personally, and was inspired by people like Sabina Lehman, the founder of AAVEA, and we connected because there was just such a strong you know, passion together, and with all the other board members. So it's up to the person to actually you know, show the interest, be passionate, be willing to learn. I think that's an important one, because the attractions industry is ever changing. It's so important to keep up with the trends and to be a learner, you know, to have that attitude of loving to just, you know, grow your skill set, grow your expertise, grow your knowledge. I'm still a learner today. You know, as I said, I'm excited about just getting to know more about the African visitor attractions and worldwide, actually. But just to start here where I am is on its own, just really excited about that. And it's so important to also find mentors, to find somebody that can sponsor you, that can support you, that can help guide your own thinking and your goals, etc. Because sometimes you might think, I wonder if this is possible. Maybe I'm just crazy. But actually, and then sometimes you discover, no, you're not crazy. You know, yeah. So it just helps to have somebody who's more matured, wiser, been there, done that, who can inspire you. And I think for a message from our side here on the continent, the whole topic around sustainability is going to be a big one going forward into the future. And so I think it's so important to learn more about that. You know, attractions are like the Okavango on, you know, a Delta, like your great migration of wild animals between the Serengeti and the Masai Mara. There's a lot of topics within the visitor attractions that one can learn more and more and more about. There are organizations that we are partnering with at at all levels, that talk to visitor attractions. And so it's so important to be willing to partner with others, so that sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel, but with partnership, you can be innovative, you can find, that you make an even bigger impact together rather than you alone or separate in a silo. So I look forward to growing up professionals into the future that remain relevant for attractions in terms of their passion, but at the same time also embracing what is unique in terms of what they bring to the table. So that's what I would encourage.
Yeah, such great advice. I think the balance of continuing your passion and being curious and putting yourself out there, but also finding guidance and mentors that can help you really grow your career. So thank you so much for your time today. This has been such a fascinating conversation. If people wanted to learn more about you, to get in touch with you, to learn more about Downtown Music Hub or AAVEA, where would you send them?
So to get to know more about Downtown Music Hub, we have our website, www.dtmh, that stands for Downtown Music Hub.co.za. And we are on all social media platforms. And also to get in touch with AAVEA, even to become a member of AAVEA, or just wanting to know more about this association, you can also visit our website, www.aavea.org.za. We are on all social media platforms. You may also contact us by just emailing us at info@aavea.org.za.
Excellent. And Mpume, this has been such a fascinating conversation. I feel like I learned so much, and we're just so grateful for the opportunity to be able to speak with you today. So thank you again for joining us here. It's just been so wonderful. And for everyone out there who's watching and listening, just remember, we are all attraction pros.
Thanks for listening to the Attraction Pros podcast.
Make sure to subscribe so you can tune in when new episodes release, and even better, please leave us a review on iTunes.
For more information, visit attractionpros.com.